After having been sick most of December, we decided to get away for a little while and headed south into some sunshine, thinking that it might help heal us and make us feel better. It did, but as soon as we got home, it was brutally cold. 15 degrees. Winter has arrived at Steeple View Farm. There was a question that I raised on one of the groups I belong to about using woven ground cover. We found woven ground cover to be a huge advantage in our farming operation last year. Not only were we able to use woven ground cover or ground fabric to assist us in raising the best crop of watermelons we ever had, we just eliminated a ton of labor time devoted to weeding because the ground fabric really suppressed the weeds and kept them all down. And as the season wore on, we realized that it was really a salvation. But the question became, what do we do with it in the wintertime? Once we've harvested the crops and we've cleaned up the garden, what do we do with the ground cover? Do we leave it down? Do we pull it up? Do we roll it up? Do we leave it in place? What? So we opted for a little bit of all of that. And I kind of want to show you around what our experience has been with woven ground cover after the gardening's done and when winter sets in. So we used woven ground cover in a couple of different ways. In this patch, these are direct seeded crops. We had squash, zucchini, cucumbers, green beans. And so we used the ground cover to cover the walking areas. As you can see here in the cucumber patch, we burned holes so that the cucumbers could avoid weed pressure. In these patches, we use the deep mulch method using compost to control where we seeded and how the weed control could be managed using compost. And we did that where we were going to be direct seeding. But if you can tell by looking out here, the way we held the ground fabric down during the season was with these 8-inch staples. We found that some of the littler 6-inch staples, the lighter weight ones, just didn't seem to. Then we also found that we had to use sandbags, a lot of sandbags, because the wind would catch the edge of the fabric. We didn't bury it in the dirt. We just stapled it down. You can see where some of the staples are here. One of them is kind of ripped through. Once the plants got up, it was fine. But in the early going, when the plants were little, we literally had the wind blow across the ground fabric and lift it up like an airfoil, like on an airplane. And so we had to come out and put down a lot of sandbags, not just along the edges, but I mean all over. So when the season was over, we thought, well, you know, the ground cover's kind of stuck to the ground now. It's been stapled down all year. And by the way, there were no wrinkles in it. It was beautiful and flat all the way across this patch. This is where we raised our hot peppers. But as the plants were pulled, and they were no longer there to serve as a windbreak and to help hold the plastic down, the winds of the winter came along, and we started battling this problem. The winds get a hold of the fabric, and not only does it pull the fabric up from the ground, but it blows it everywhere. I mean, everywhere. There's fabric blown around out in that patch. It's blown completely off of the ground here. And the disadvantage to that is the staples are pulled loose and they're laying everywhere. So now we have staples laying loose on the ground all over the place that we have to try and retrieve before they get pressed in and become a nuisance going forward. And then the plastic is all balled up. This was not a good solution to leave it down in the wintertime. I think next year we're going to roll it all back to the end of the patch and weigh it down and probably put down a ground cover. My plan was to really leave the ground cover down all winter long and then in the spring pull it back and compost the rows underneath the holes that were burned in it, so that when we planted the new crop in the spring, we were planting into fresh compost. That was the plan. Well, the wind pulled the fabric up for me, and quite frankly, it's a mess. I wish I'd have rolled it up or put it in the barn or done something else, but I didn't. But now that we've got this mess on our hands, we're waiting for the ground to dry up a little bit more. We're going to roll it up, put it at the end of the patch and weigh it down. It's already late January. It's probably too late to plant anything in like a cover crop. So we're going to just have to count on what we call shallow tilling, inch maybe, just enough to break the crust, and deep compost under the ground fabric come spring when we get ready to plant. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I told you guys that we were going to experiment with it, and we did. Overall, it was a great advantage to us. Cut way down on labor. Not very expensive. It's available in a lot of different sources. And, you know, really, when you get right down to it, it's not hard to come by. It's everywhere. But the price is just way less than labor. I saved as much on labor costs this year. Well, let me put it this way. What I spent to cover my entire garden in ground fabric was about 25% of the labor cost that we were spending weeding the garden all year long. If that gives you some idea of how advantageous it was to have the woven ground fabric, I will use it again. I'll use it more. I'll be using more of it. We're going to find new ways to use it. And I think that we're going to experiment with new ways to plant through it as well. And we'll have more about that later. On the next episode, stay tuned. We're back now. We're back from Florida. We're back from illness. Winter is here, but we are just pumped and ready to go like all of you guys are, I'm sure, thinking about the upcoming season. And it's time to start seeding trays. So coming up, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about our plans to build a greenhouse inside our greenhouse. I'm going to show you what that looks like, what we're going to do with it, how we're going to construct it. All that's coming up in the very next episode. So stay with us. And if you haven't done so yet, if you just happen to stumble on this video for some reason, welcome aboard. We're glad you're here. We're trying to build the video channel, the YouTube channel. So if you wouldn't mind, please, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button down in the corner. And if you want to, there's a little bell somewhere down here too. If you hit the little bell, then you're signed up for notifications. So that means that when new content posts, you'll get a notification there's new content, and you won't have to remember to come back and check us out. We'll send you something to let you know. So, hey, thanks for being with us. Thanks for sticking around through all of the kind of the trial and error videos that I did in the beginning. Go back and look at them. I think there's some usable content, but a lot of the stuff that I did in the beginning just doesn't suit me anymore. We're trying this new method out, and the idea is we're going to not only give you useful information, but maybe offer you a little bit different perspective on this entire wonderful experience of homesteading, providing your own food, and market gardening here at Steeple View Farm. Thanks for being with us. See you in the next episode.